This morning in the Sunday Spotlight, the politics of the climate crisis. While we set records here in southern Arizona, climate experts here and around the world are sounding the alarm, saying even more dire consequences could be on the way. Meanwhile, this morning from Washington, D.C. to Tucson, there are competing ideas about everything from how to handle the issue to where it should be on the list of priorities. This morning, I speak with Dr. Zach Guido, Assistant Research Professor at the Arizona Institutes for Resilience and School of Natural Resources and Environment. Now, surveys show parties are really split when it comes to climate change. I want you to take a look at this latest survey from NPR, PBS NewsHour, and Marist. It shows the majority, 56% of people say climate change is a major threat. It includes almost all of the Democrats, but almost 70% of Republicans say it's either a minor threat or not one at all. And signs of this stalemate are growing. I asked this morning Dr. Guido about where we are right now and how to find a way forward.
I want to break this down between the science and the politics. First, the science of it all. There are statistics showing the Earth is warming. We've seen it here. We're coming off one of the hottest months ever on this planet. Even in southern Arizona, more than 50 days in a row of temps 100 or higher. Including every day in July. Just your thoughts on where this is going.
Well, it is a striking run of extreme events. I mean, we just came off, Hurricane Hillary here and the tropical storm Hillary here in the Southwest. There hadn't been a landfall for a tropical storm in like 80 years. We've got a massive heat dome in the central U.S. We've had heat records in the Southwest and even beyond the Southwest, globally, there's quite a bit of changes going on. I mean, if you look up at the Arctic, record temperatures up there, sea ice conditions are at low levels. The sea surface temperatures across the Atlantic are some of the hottest we've seen or warmest we've seen on record. In terms of things like warming temperatures and heat waves, the expectation is, a continuation of that. And I think what's critical now is just thinking about both working on the adaptation front, making our societies more resilient to these kinds of environmental change, but also, social change that will be in response to, what we do on behalf of the climate. And other problems that we're facing.
So with the warmer temperatures that you're talking about here, come a lot of other issues. You've got higher sea levels, flooding damage like we've seen in California, more people struggling, ending up in the hospitals. As a scientist, how concerned are you about what could be ahead?
Well, of course I'm concerned. I think I'm concerned about a lot of things. Climate change, biodiversity loss, inequity, the erosion of public trust in science. And interestingly, I think climate and climate solutions sort of intersect with all of those things. So I am very concerned. But I also think that there's opportunities, like I said before, that this opens the door for us. And I would, if you're looking at trajectories, I'd say my concern is less than it was 5-10 years ago. Studying this, I do think that there has been quite a bit of progress just in our discourse, not in every group, but nationally, internationally. I think that there is a lot of movement in terms of renewable energy deployment and such things like that. Now, I'm concerned. I think we're moving in the right direction. I think the rate of change is the major question. And, maybe 10 years ago, 5 years ago, where sort of worst case scenarios were very depressing, I think worst case scenarios now are less depressing, but it's still going to create massive need for reorganization.
I want to talk about the politics of this because these are the decision makers who are going to make some pretty crucial decisions moving forward. Tucson's Democratic Mayor Regina Romero pushing reforms very hard, as you may know, planting more trees, getting a climate action plan into place, hiring a chief resilience officer. The chair of the Pima County GOP, though, says the city is ignoring bigger issues. This from Dave Smith, the chair of that party in Pima County. He says, responding to the mayor's plan, quote, "This is the kind of malarkey that's got to stop. We've got a finite amount of money and we have an infinite amount of problems, and she needs to start solving day-to-day problems of the city." He continues, quote, "If you want to talk about the quality of life, let's talk about the crime. Let's talk about the homeless. Let's talk about maintaining our street properly. That's the main issues the city needs to face," end quote. I know you're not a politician. You're a scientist. You focus on the issues, but I wanted to get your take on this big gap between these political parties and how to move forward.
Yeah, well, first, I have a lot of respect for the people, the politicians. Not a job that I would want. They're dealing with obviously a lot of challenges, like that quote suggested, across a whole bunch of different aspects. And they have to figure and make hard choices. I guess I would say that I think that there's a false choice between the economy and climate or health or other kinds of environmental issues. I see that, addressing one, some of our climate solutions, for example, transforming our energy economy, can create jobs. And I think that, making our cities less hot, or green infrastructure, for example, goes a long way to addressing, health disparities and that sort of thing. So I actually think that we should do both. And I think that there are creative ways to advance sort of environmental, healthy environments with the economy. Pitting one versus the other, I do think is a little bit of a false choice.
If you're pitting one against the other, in your opinion, again, as a scientist, what do you think that does short and long term for the climate?
Well, I think it probably plays to people who, favor some solution. It gives arguments to people who favor some solutions to other, as opposed to giving arguments to both sides. So I would say, I think we have to change the narrative about climate change. And one way to do that, I think, is to speak to broad audiences and not polarize the issue. I find climate has become a very polarizing issue in the local, national, and international, probably less so international, but certainly in the national politics. So, I think that, again, I think there's, if we can depoliticize it, I think that's a win-win situation. I'm not sure that that's going to happen, though.
And it may not be soon, while Dr. Guido also says he'd like to see both sides of the aisle come together and work on meaningful plans to deal with climate change while also helping the economy. It is not a central issue right now in D.C. as lawmakers look to next year's budget. That is it for this week's Sunday Spotlight. We'll be back here again next week, but 13 News Live this morning is back after a quick break.